Good evening and welcome to the Public Services Committee meeting. We will start with approval of the minutes. Don't know if everybody jump at it at the same time.
I would move to approve the minutes. I'm glad I'm there for you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we are going to move into our presentations. First is reports and updates. As you know, we've been continuing the conversation about the tobacco-free ordinance. We had a working session with the full council here in Chambers about a month ago. Lots of great information and had many members of the administration here as well. And so today we're going to just further that conversation. I've asked Mary Michaels to be here today. I know Director Franken is out of town, and so that is the reason for her absence today. So if you have additional questions for her, you're welcome to reach out to her. But I'll just ask Mary Michaels to come on up and just kind of give us an update, maybe talk a little bit about what's taken place since that time and maybe recap some of what's happened at our informational work session that we had as well. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Mary Michaels, Public Health Prevention Coordinator with the Health Department. Thank you for this opportunity to continue the conversation, the great feedback and back and forth conversation we've had since the working session last month. So, over the past several months, as we've discussed this topic, we know that we've already covered the benefits of health policy and we've talked about the health impacts of tobacco, and we understand that, you know that very well, and so there's no reason to go back and revisit that. What we really want to focus on is that feedback that we've heard from all of you over the past several weeks regarding the different types of properties. And so after the working session, we just took all of that feedback back to the project team, and we had invited Jim David and Councilor Erickson to be part of that group so that you have the liaison to really share the council's feedback with that group, and then start looking at those different ideas and suggestions and explore how that might look regarding some of the different city properties here. So really this is just a continuation of that conversation and sharing some of the opportunities that might be out there regarding some of our city properties. So what I'm going to do, just kind of in the interest of time, is I'm going to review all of those different opportunities with you, and then we can come back and have further discussion.
That sounds great.
Okay, all right.
That's perfect.
So we're going to just open up them with the leased properties. And when it came to the leased and managed properties, we heard a lot of your good suggestions and feedback and questions about whether these are included or whether they're not included in language. And as you heard from a couple of those representatives at the working session and even at the end of last year as we were discussing this, is there really some good benefits to including all of these properties in these efforts, just because it allows us to work together as city partners to communicate about policy, to communicate with our patrons, our residents, our visitors, kind of to cross-promote and share in that. And it really does make it easier for the community to understand. So when we're talking about the leased properties, it's really two specific properties right now that we're looking at, and that would be the Sheraton Hotel and then the new hotel being developed at the Elmwood Golf Course. And as we look at the opportunities for those leased properties, some ideas that were brought forward were simply just to say that leased properties may designate a tobacco use area. That way it gives them that flexibility to designate an area. But then as Craig Pomeranke from the Sheraton mentioned, that they are smoke-free indoors. If those properties wanted to, then extend that to all of their outdoor areas they could, but at least including them and saying they may designate a tobacco use area gives them that flexibility. And then kind of a good segue then is to look at the rest of that campus with the Sheraton, and that leads a little bit into the managed properties at the Event Center campus. And again, you heard some feedback from Terry Torkelson from SMG. There was conversations with SMG and the Canaries and Sheraton kind of as campus partners out there. Again, those benefits of including all of those facilities in a collaborative effort, but again, giving them maybe some flexibility through language saying that they may designate a tobacco use area. Another option that came up, as you might remember from the working session, we discussed the ring road that is around the event center itself. And that would remove tobacco use from around the entrances into the event center, the convention center, and the arena. But then it does then allow that tobacco use in the parking lot. So then you would also have a kind of a tobacco-free zone around that sidewalk and gate area of the Canary Stadium. So again, you're removing it from around the entrances, but It's very easy to sign and communicate with the public that way because your signage then is just right at the edge of the parking lot saying no tobacco use beyond this point. So it seemed like an effective way to remove the tobacco use from the entrances, which was some of the concerns we've talked about. It gives an accessible point where somebody who is using tobacco doesn't have to completely leave the property, but then again, they could have that flexibility to designate an area, with the hotel, or the event center, or the Canaries. Other types of managed properties, some are parks properties and some are not. And so there's some different ideas that go along with those. If you remember from the working session, we did hear from Tom Jansa with the golf courses, and that was an area that had several questions brought up about golf courses and being included. As we looked at different parks policies from around the country, we were looking for how some of those other communities work with their golf courses. Some include the golf courses in the policies, others had some different exceptions. And one idea that was brought forward would be to allow tobacco use during the course of play, after the first tee, but before the final green. So again, it's not right up there around the clubhouse, the practice green, the driving range, places where you might have more families, the first tee program and that kind of thing, but still address some of the concerns that were brought up by the golf community. Regarding other properties, and those would include things like the zoo, the arboretum, the pavilion, Great Bear. Many of those facilities have been part of these discussions, looking to be part of a policy and understanding the benefits of having tobacco-free property. Again, thinking about patrons and employees and having it be away from entrances. So an idea that was discussed there would be, again, looking at that parking lot option. Again, it's easy to sign as you come up to the edge of a property, so it's easy for the public to understand, but it still then removes that tobacco use away from the entrances of some of those. And again, with these managed facilities, if it said they may, allow tobacco use in parking lots, or that does give them some flexibility. If they want to be a completely tobacco-free property, they could either choose to not use it, allow it in their parking lot, but that would be an idea for those managed properties. Then when you get into the owned properties, so actual ownership, city-owned property, again, there's parks property and non-park property. As we looked at some of the city-owned non-park property, so your city buildings, your libraries, and there wasn't as much, that's an area where it just looks like how most of these buildings are situated, that it would make sense that the exteriors would be tobacco-free. We'll look at the traffic at many city buildings. It's primarily city employees that are already covered by the executive order, so they are tobacco-free already at any time of the day when they're on the clock, whether they're in the building, outside the building, in the parking lot, in a city vehicle. That those would be opportunities to have tobacco-free exteriors. Again, easy to sign right at the edge of the property. But then looking at libraries, perhaps that would be an area also to consider completely tobacco-free property, just because of the high volume of children that are in and out of those facilities at different times of the day. And then city-owned parks property. The parks, the pools, the sports facilities within the parks. As we look around the country, there are over 1,200 communities that do regulate tobacco use in parks. Many of them are completely tobacco-free because of the mission of parks as healthy places of recreation and socialization. But we've heard the comments and the questions that you have brought forward and had some really good discussion about parks and all the activities and events that happen in our parks, and how do we provide some of those health benefits yet still balance some of those concerns that you were sharing with us. And so an idea that was brought forward for consideration with parks would be, again, thinking about the parking lot as an area where you could exempt from the policy and allow tobacco use. Again, it makes it very easy to communicate with the public, easy to sign at the edge of that parking lot, but then you're keeping the tobacco use away from the event area or the recreation area that is happening in that park. But again, an easy to understand concept for the public. And then just in general topics not related to specific properties. We know we've had a lot of conversation. You've had some great questions and comments about enforcement and looking at things like, is there a fine, is there not a fine? As we brought all that feedback back to the project team, the fine language is something that we've kind of taken out of discussion because we appreciate that feedback from you. Again, looking at the communities that have been able to do this work, so much of it is on the education and the awareness. And if we do this collectively as city properties with our managed and our leased partners and thinking about all of those organizations that shared input with you over the last several months, that's an extension of our education and our awareness efforts and being able to have them help us communicate the benefits and really share in the benefits of this policy. So that's a brief overview, and I know we can come back to any one of those with comments and questions. And also Secretary Kearney is here from Parks, Carrie Torkelson is here from SMG, Craig Pomeranke is here from the Sheraton. So for any questions that you might have from any of us, we're happy to answer those.
Thank you so much. I appreciate putting it all together from when we had our work session. It's good to kind of relook at it and see where we've come and where we're at. So I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience that wants to add anything additional. I know there's several counselors here as well, and if you have questions at any point, please just come on up and we can continue that conversation. If not, I'll turn it over to the council to ask any questions or statements or comments, any of that. None? Oh, Councilor Starr.
I've been leaving you hanging there.
That's okay.
Mary, if you don't mind, and maybe this is probably maybe more for legal or city attorney, but are there any concerns that if we try to implement any of these policies with current contracts that are in place with the managed properties, that do we have the authority to move forward? Okay, thank you. Mr. Fifley shaking his head that there isn't anything that really slows us down. Would we need to do it property by property, or is it something that we could do in one ordinance? I wasn't going to let you off the hook quite that easily, but
I may.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. Councilor Starr, to answer your question, I mean, it's either expressly or implied in each management contract that they will follow all ordinances, and including post entering into a contract, follow those ordinances that come afterwards. So,
perfect. That answers. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilor Starr?
Well,
okay.
Go ahead.
Councilor Selberg, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, again, I think this goes a little more on our working session we had a couple weeks ago. I think it's good that we're getting back into the subject and kind of doing some back and forth. I don't know, my question's for you or the committee in general, or, I mean, is this more of we're still shaping and talking back and forth, or are we looking at having this on the council agenda again soon, or where are we?
Well, and I think that is where we are today I mean, it certainly can be brought forward by the administration. It can be brought forward by the council. That's all left up for negotiation. I know there's been some sidebar conversations as well with some hesitancy to just not rush. I know there's been conversations going on for some time, but to just be, as we hear the information, to just not make a snap judgment and say, okay, full steam ahead, but more or less just give some time to vet it. If at that point someone wants to bring it forward, or we want to revisit it as a full council, or also, I mean, really we have lots of options, or we can bring it back to public services again. I would be a little nervous just to go full steam ahead, just with kind of, as we've collected the information, to give some time to kind of chew on it a little bit, to making sure that processing what those changes are from where it was originally to where we are today. We've heard that the fine has been removed, which I'm appreciative of, that you've heard that concern from the council, and I thank you for kind of taking that off the table for some that had heartache about that. And so what are the differences of where it was to where it is now? And so that's something I think as a council we need to discuss. Councilor Staley.
And I guess having come full circle with this issue, I think the efforts that we've had thus far have encouraged the community to talk about this. I would say that I've heard a lot of people express concerns about individual rights, that we don't want to have an overreach of governmental regulations on into people's lives. And I think smokers in general are, as I've been talking with them, I think there is a respect that they have. I don't think any smoker wants to go out there and start blowing smoke in somebody's face. These facilities having policies already and maybe working at more implementation on those things, I think are good things. Standing 20 feet away from the door or whatever that is, having ashtrays farther away from the door, I think those are all positive steps. So I agree with Councilor Erickson that maybe we need to just continue the dialogue at this point and not rush into anything.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. Anybody else have anything to add?
If you don't mind, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
I think we're at a point, we've had a lot of discussion, and I think we've had a lot of comments from our partners that they're ready to do something. And I think maybe we have a project team in place that could put some proposals together. I think that moving forward I think there's things we agree on. With Mary's presentation today, I think there are things that could come forward, and if we want to do that as individuals and bring specific proposals, but I sure wouldn't mind seeing a way to implement some of the things that we agree on. And I think we're at that point where I think there are things we agree on and that could move forward in a measured pace without a broad ban of all city properties, but at the same time being able to find those things we agree upon. And like I said, the longer we wait, the less impact that we have on our community and some positive change that we can make.
So the only thing I would add to that, thank you for your comments, I appreciate that. I would encourage whoever would like to bring that forward to certainly take that on if you would like. I would maybe encourage, I obviously am not directing in any way, shape, or form, but encouraging a step approach of what are making sure that we do have those things that we agree on. So we kind of don't just have a Groundhog's Day and create the same issue that we had. If there's extreme heartache over one particular area or another, or if we can live to compromise in other areas as well, I think that's important, and that's a key to this is having that compromise. And so I think that we need to go ahead and just have those conversations, still continue it based on what we've heard today, to making sure that I hear a few things that are of concern, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be everyone agreeing, and so we can move those things forward for those that choose to do that. If I'm seeing a lot of head nodding here. Councilor Selberg.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would, sort of work through if there is an issue or two that's still a sticking point. I'd like to see us kind of work through what those are, whatever they may be. So like Groundhog Day is a good way to put it. We're not having a knockdown drag out again for a few weeks about this or that. I think that's kind of the point of bringing this all up again a few weeks ago. So measured, I think, was what I heard. I think that's a good term, good pace.
Right. So we will continue the conversation with the Health Department, with Mary Michaels and the project team, and Councilor Starr, I know that you are passionate about this issue, so I'd ask that you be involved too if you're so willing to do so. We've had numerous conversations and certainly don't want to rush anything. I know that you're mindful of the summertime and the outdoor smoking time, but I also want to make sure that we're being mindful and methodical about it so we don't have what happened last time, maybe. So, okay, with that, I will open it up to any other discussion, any other open discussion or items that anybody on the committee would like to talk about. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.